What is going on, everybody? Thank you all so much for tuning into this live stream segment on Mikasa Sukasa. And of course, as always, I'm your humble host, Niko House. We have a very, very special guest today discussing the issues with moi. It is Socialist MMA, aka Nick. Well, actually, I should say most people just know you as Socialist MMA. Most people have no idea what your real name is. But what's going on, man? How you doing? Thanks for coming on the show.
No, man, it's good to be here, bro. What's good?
Hey, bro, it's been a long time coming. We've been talking about this for a while now, man. It.
Yep.
I know you started your YouTube channel what, like maybe 3-4 months back, or at least started covering the news more about 3-4 months back.
Yeah. Actually, my YouTube channel wasn't really my idea at first because I was traveling, canvassing with helping Bernie Sanders out in multiple states, and I remember I had some people that asked me to, like, kind of log my journey, and that's how my YouTube channel actually started. I would just go down South Carolina and I would talk about. I would do like a video every once a few days, just talk about what I've seen, the kind of people I talked to while I was canvassing, and it went from like a hobbyist YouTube page from. I started doing like random videos on anything that pissed me off, and I feel like talking about. And now I got people watching my stream, so I'm streaming on Twitch and I upload some of those replays on YouTube. So actually, like, kind of came out of nowhere. That wasn't my plan, but hey, people watching, so I'm
Hey,
down.
that's how it goes, man. Whenever I started the DNC fraud lawsuit, like while I was doing my investigations, like I was kind of like updating people and I was like letting people know why I decided to investigate or take that path, whatever I was talking about. And they were like, "Man, you should do a show. Like, you should just update us. Like, can you just?" And if I go like 2 days without streaming, they be like, "Yo, where you been at? Like, you all right? You good? Like, can you stream some more?" I'm like, all right, I guess." You know what I'm saying? So but it's cool, like, cause that's whenever it happens, like naturally, like that. That's how you know, like that's what you're supposed to be doing. You feel me? So
Right.
I'm glad that you have taken the opportunity to kind of like just inform people from your perspective, which in my opinion is a unique perspective on in the independent media, which is what you're part of now, which is from you're a an independent minded black male like myself, but you live in the South, like not the fake South, not like Broward County South, like which is in South Florida, right by Miami, but but like you're like deep in there, and so you've seen like when people talk about conservative, like older conservative black people, it's different.
Yeah, I grew up around them. I've been around them. I know them. Trust me. Like whenever I see like people talk about like black voters and how black people think, especially like the white progressives and white liberals, whenever they swear they have like their pulse on the black community, I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, you guys don't know what the fuck you talking about. Like, not one bit. Like, especially when you hear it all the time from liberals who like, yo, black people like Joe Biden. Like, they all fell in line for Joe Biden. It's
Yeah,
like, for one, that was like only a very, very small percentage of the population. That's only like half of black people, because only half of black people vote. And then if you
that's
take
true.
that and then combine with the fact that Bernie actually won the under 50 black vote. So it's like,
Mm-hmm.
bro, they just say bullshit. And I know, growing up in the situation I've been in and being around people who hate politics,
Yeah.
I'm like, man, you guys are full of shit. And that's why we connect. And I was cool with that. I had that for like a few months, and then I changed my picture to my real picture, and then my follower count blew up.
Yeah.
And then it was like people were like, oh shit, he's black. Like that's how, like, I'm dead serious. I have 500 followers in June. I can literally see the tweet where I was like, yo, I'm actually start using my real pictures right now so y'all know, because so many people would call me Russian. So many people was calling me Russian. I was like, all right, bro, I'm tired of this. I'm gonna put my picture up here so I don't have to deal with this shit no more.
Yeah.
And just like, that didn't change shit. That didn't change. But I put my picture on there and they were like, oh, you black? And you talking like this? Like, bro, y'all know this is how a lot of black people feel. The black people that don't vote, I'm coming from them point of view. I
That's
come from
true.
that point of view.
And a lot of black people won't tell them how they feel, right? They won't even like tell them because they feel like this is how they get treated, right? And make no mistake about it, people, like, it's more inflammatory when you were black and you were speaking against political establishment. It like, yeah, like every anti-establishment progressive or populist gets attacked, but it's different when you black.
Yeah.
They make you feel like, how dare you not appreciate these hog maws and pig feed that I'm putting out there in your little, Uncle Ben's cabin. You better get back on the plantation. Like, that's how they talk to you.
100%. I had people literally tell me that one of the favorite things about my account is how I will expose like the racist white liberals
Mm-hmm.
because a lot of people like, and I don't even blame them. Like if you're a white progressive and you grow around, if you're around like-minded people, you may not understand like they never asked me why I dislike the Democratic Party. They never asked me where I'm coming from. Like the immediate assumption is that I'm a bad actor. I'm a Russian because how can a black person not like the Democratic Party? That's their mindset, and I suppose all the time. So
How
I
dare
love
you?
that. like what? Because they believe we owe them something, and they believe that we should be happy to even be part of the discussion, to even
Yes.
be involved in it. So whenever they see us push back on both options, it drives them crazy. Like
Hey, by
I
the
don't know.
way, I had to restart the string. I just switched software because OBS just started acting crazy. But it ain't gonna, it's
It's all good.
everybody. They're good. The same link, but
It's
I just
all
want to
good.
let you
It's
know.
all good.
But yeah, man, everybody kind of like they know. I mean, like I said, bro, I do the same thing. Like I retweet people, like I quote tweet them just to laugh at. I'm like, yo, look at. Do y'all see how ridiculous people are? And what's crazy is like real talk, like. I know for a fact if we were face to face, you would never in your life try me like that. Never. And I know I ain't gonna say nobody's name, but there's some progressive YouTubers out there that was doing like a lot of this on camera and doing a lot of this on Twitter. We saw each other in person at the People's Convention. They looked up and they were like, oh. And they just like, they're like, Niko. Some of my boys were like, Niko, bro, is that? I'm like, oh, it is. And then next thing you know, they run out the other way, bro. I'm like, and you know, I'm not like that no more. But I will debate the shit out of you without any type of shame, like, cause if I'm saying it on Twitter, nobody got to question what I'm like on Twitter, what I'm like on camera, versus what I'm like in real life. Nobody got to wonder if I'm consistent, cause everybody knows that. But I like Sean King, like me and Sean King were actually like we were cool, like we used to email and we used to DM each other, and then whenever I was like, bro. Like, do you really feel like Hillary Clinton's better for black people? Like you probably shouldn't feel that way. And he blocked me. Didn't just he didn't block me. He unfollowed me and then just stopped responding. We was actually supposed to go get coffee and he stopped responding. And I was like, okay, whatever. I didn't think anything of it. And then like I did a video like just critiquing something that he had either said or written, but it wasn't even like nothing crazy. It's like, hey man, like me and Kyle Kalinske are friends, and I've critiqued him on camera too. Like, and we're still friends. But Sean took that shit so personal that he blocked me after that shit.
That's crazy. A lot of people got insane egos. I remember me and Sean, we used to follow each other. I unfollowed him first because he was propping up Kamala. Like I actually didn't know. I didn't actually know a lot about Sean King. He was a big Bernie surrogate. Yeah. And then so I followed him on Twitter. And then I would just see like so many stupid ass takes, bro. I'm like, fuck. I'm like, come on, bro. Like as a black, I
consistently
you,
stupid.
But it's so stupid. I was like, all right. There was like 2 or 3 of them. All right, I forgive that one. And then he came out. Was like. Yeah, Kamala Harris. After, because I remember this is why I found it. Someone did like before and after, like during the Bernie campaign, he was trashing on Kamala, and then Kamala was named VP. He gave one of the tweets. I don't know if you saw it. Where he was like, "Yo, this is a historic moment.
Yeah, bro.
Kamala
Switch that shit up amazing."
I saw that one. I was like, I'm done. I can't do it, bro.
But I'm gonna tell you a funny story about that. So I already knew what Sean King was about to do because he actually told everybody in the article that he did when the election first started. He was like, oh, well, you know, she does have her problem as a prosecutor, but I wouldn't say she was a horrible prosecutor. I would give her about a C-. And like was writing the article kind of like trying to play bat and clean up for her. Like, oh, I know where this is going. Yeah. I know where this is. But also it shows you he knew where it was going. Like, in other words, he knew well before the election even kicked off, or at least got to the point where we're at right now, that like Kamala is likely somehow going to be implanted as a Democratic nominee, either as a presidential candidate or the vice presidential candidate. And so I'm trying to position myself right now so that whenever the time comes, I can capitulate and hit the switch that they always do. And people always ask me, why are you so hard? Or why I'll be going hard on people that like that if you just coming into the game, like you see, oh, he's a Bernie surrogate. Why would you not like him? Because I was a state director for North Carolina for Bernie's campaign until February of 2016. So like less than 3 weeks before the North Carolina primary. Like I know all these people. I worked either with them directly or indirectly. We all had the same circles, and I already know how they move. But people didn't want to hear that because they like putting their faith in these heroes, these false idols, because they worship the right white man at the right time, and like that's really what it comes down to.
That is exactly what it comes down to. And with Kamala Harris, I'm very, very interested in. I would love to know when a lot of these celebrity Biden allies knew Kamala Harris was going to be the next one in charge, because it's kind of obvious when she was going to be VP. Because she always had a decent amount of celebrity fanfare, being a young senator from California. But it was like I remember like the weeks leading up to Kamala being selected as VP. I know it's even more like celebrity outreach towards her. I see more celebrities talking about her, and I'm like, oh, that's how I know that's the Democratic Party plan. Is to make her like the next leader. I remember the funny thing is, you talked about that. I remember you made a prediction that literally everyone with common sense is making, that Kamala Harris is going to be one in charge when Biden administration takes over. I would be shocked. I would be utterly shocked if Biden lasts the entire term. This is very shocked. This is very common now. This people have been saying for weeks. I remember you said that and people got very mad at you, because it was just a very simple observation that people know that she was selected from day one to be the leader of the Democratic Party. Ever since right after Hillary Clinton lost, Hillary people started grooming her up and propping her up as the next thing for the Democratic Party. And another big tell from me personally on that Kamala Harris was going to be the next executive leader of the Democratic Party was when she voted against the 10% military budget decrease. Because when I saw that, I was
it was just 10%. She voted against 10%.
Yeah, because that was
I thought she would have been smart enough to vote for that, or vote against, or vote for the decrease. I mean,
she voted against the 10% military budget decrease. And when she did that, I was like, okay, so she's preparing herself to be the manager of the military-industrial complex.
Yep.
When you see stuff like that,
which is even worse, because she knows shit. Like, she don't even know enough about foreign policy to even be a good enough hawk. Like, she can't even some motherfuckers could justify their hawkish shit with humanitarian causes and stuff like that. She's not even smart enough for that when it comes to foreign policy.
Yeah, and this is why I've been warning people too, because a lot of people, they have a childlike perspective of politics. And when I say childlike, they're like, okay, Joe Biden. They look at his platform, they listen to what he's saying. They're like, well, Joe Biden will at least be a good step forward, completely ignoring the fact how U.S. politics and the military-industrial complex works.
Yeah.
So this is what I always mention to people. So when George Bush took office, he set records in terms of bombing, in terms of warmonger. He bombed more people than Bill Clinton did.
Yeah, he basically normalized bombing in the Middle East, normalized that shit.
Exactly. And then you have Barack Obama. He ran after peace candidate. He ran after the guy who's going to end the wars, and he did the unthinkable. He bombed more people than George Bush did. He took 2 wars and created 7. Mm-hmm. And he was a bigger warmonger than George Bush, more civilian deaths overall than George Bush. And then Donald Trump got elected. Yep. And Donald Trump, once again, did the unthinkable. He killed more people with drone strikes in his first year than Obama did in 8. So what I take away from that, my basic takeaway, looking at the trends over the last 15, 20 years.
No, I think he used more drones. I don't think he killed more people. I think he used more.
Used more drones? Okay.
Yeah, I think he used more drones. Either way, I mean, there's not a lot of people left after.
But my point is because when I look at that trend that went over the course of 15, 20 years, that shows me that this is not based on party and not based on president. It's based on who will follow the orders of the permanent state. Meaning the people the military generals, the weapon contractors, the revolving door of people that work in weapon defense industries, people that come from the military, then they roll on, they become part of MSNBC, CNN, New York Times, Washington Post. People don't understand how, whenever someone say the deep state or the permanent state, a lot of dumb brains, they assume you're talking about conspiracy theory because Alex Jones did his job as a useful idiot, pretty much robbing that term of legitimacy. That was Alex Jones' role.
Yeah, it's super
He would
weird how
say
people.
everyone. He would say half truth every once in a while, but then he say 80% false shit, so people don't know what's true. And because of that, because it is like Alex Jones, people don't know that the permanent state and the D state is actual thing. Like
Yeah,
CIA,
it's not even
career.
controversial.
Like people
That's what's
literally think
super
that's
weird
a
about
conspiracy.
that. Like, well, you know
Bro,
what
I
it
can't hear
is
you, bro.
though. Here's what I think it
Yeah,
is. People don't understand. People they freak out because like if you acknowledge that the deep state is real, like then you have to acknowledge that you don't have as much control over your government and your country
I can't
as you
hear
thought
you.
you. Oh, you can't. Hold up. Let me fix that.
I was like, I don't know if that's me or that or if
It
anyone
might
else
be
can hear
me.
you or
No,
not.
it might be me. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now, bro.
But I was saying that if you acknowledge that the deep state is real, then you have to acknowledge that you don't have as much control over your country, or the people don't have as much control over your country as you thought.
Great point.
Then you have to go on the rabbit hole like, well, hold up, well, what were they involved in? Well, then you're like, were they involved in Cuba? Shit, they were. What about the apartheid? Shit, they were. What about, man, let me go back to the Nazis. Oh, shit. They were there too.
Yeah.
Like, and you start going down the rabbit hole. You're like, well, what about my favorite politicians? It's like a racist, like figuring out that like they were wrong their entire lives, and they got to go back and look at everybody in their family, every mentor they've ever had, anyone they've ever knew or hung around that they had respect for, and be like, all of y'all was wrong. Yes,
and that's what emotionally mature people do. That's what I did. I posted those tweets in 2012 when I was supportive of Barack Obama. I'm very open about my political development. The same thing you just laid out is the rabbit hole that I went down once I started learning about the military-industrial complex. Because I tell people when I look at those tweets, I was like, those tweets leading up to 2012 is a time where it was around the time I was like, man, Obama's not who I thought he was. But I was still like, man, I'm still gonna vote for this guy because we can't have Mitt Romney win. I'll tell you, I fought for that shit. So then when I learned about how this permanent state, this deep state is a real thing, and then when I learned about Obama drone strikes, then I learned about what happened in Libya, for example, I'm like, yo, I did the exact same thing you said a lot of people will have to do. I backtracked like, oh shit, everything I thought was bullshit. and I remember coming to that realization. And now to get back to my original point, because my original point was like, if you look at the trend of all the administrations, it's clear that the permanent state is a true thing. So this is why I go back to why I'm not necessarily, I don't allow people to fearmonger and vote shame me about Joe Biden, because when I see Kamala Harris voting against that 10% military decrease, that tells me that she is more than willing to take the orders of the same permanent state actors that drive Donald Trump to be a warmonger.
That wasn't even going to pass anyway, right? Because like we know that the Republicans still run the Senate, and we know that most of the Democrats are warmongers. But what's interesting about that is that apparently at least enough Democrats and enough Republicans were like, okay, 10% seems pretty reasonable, especially given everything that's going on, that they were like, yeah, we let you pretend like you supported Medicare for all. We let you pretend like you supported UBI in name only. We let you pretend, but this shit is too close. So go ahead and vote against that. Now, like, so, you know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, like, we're going to pretend to be, I think she pretended to be against one of Trump's military budgets, literally one.
Yeah.
And everybody knew, like, it's because she already knew it was going to pass. But the 10% thing was like so commonsensical. They didn't want to take the chance because that one vote could be a big ass difference. And then, of course, people would look to Kamala and be like, well, you said that you were going to lower the budgets. How are you going? And that's what happened. Like, and then when I think that was right before she got nominated, or like maybe a month or so before she became the VP pick. So that was her saying, hey, y'all, I'm still on your team. I'm still on it. Don't forget about good old Kamala. Know what I'm saying? CNN. I announced on Martin Luther King's birthday. Remember?
Yep. That's her letting them know that she's not going to rock the boat. And that go back to the point that you brought up earlier and the point that I make. It's clear that whether Biden serves his 4 years or not, if you look at the level he at cognitively right now, he's not going to run the country. Even if he don't formally step down, there's no one with any sort of common sense that believes Joe Biden actually going to be in charge. So my thing is, why I tell people, if Joe Biden's not going to be in charge, if he don't have the mental ability to even make the decisions for himself, which is clear, who's going to be making those decisions?
Well, I
Who's
mean,
gonna be making
Citigroup
those
was making
decisions?
decisions for Obama for the corporate side. Then Hillary was clearly making decisions for him on the foreign policy side. What a lot of people don't know is, so I think it was pretty clear that like Obama's foreign policy got demonstratively worse after 2012, like really bad. And I mean, that was when Libya happened. That's when he increased the drone strikes dramatically. And you know, right before that's when it's almost like we green lighted him just because he got Osama. Like that's basically what he was riding on. And what happened was obviously Hillary Clinton becomes Secretary of State. And on top of that, in the second term, John Podesta becomes his chief of staff. And people don't know that. Like that was 2012. So John Podesta is like Hillary Clinton's little bitch. And everybody knows it, but he pulls a lot. His family is like one of the most connected families in Washington's history, like DC's history. It's well known. And so you get Hillary Secretary of State, then Podesta comes in, and then all of a sudden you start to find out about Uranium One, Honduras, Haiti. He still allows her to have the Clinton Global Initiative, and I'm like, all this shit motherfuckers talking about Trump just taking some money from the Russians. Yeah. Bro, Hillary took money from everybody. Everybody. While she was Secretary of State. Shit that she was doing while she was Secretary of State was directly connected to the money she was taking. And they were like, nah, but like, that's different though. Why? Because sexism, bruh.
Because to them, that business as usual. Like the Hunter Biden story that's been coming out. Oh, like, bro. Anyone with basic common sense looks at that scenario and like, yo, that is corruption. That's literally the definition of corruption. But then what the Democratic loyalists been saying? They're like, oh no, that's Alabama. You can't attack family.
Yeah, I'm like, attacking family, bro. It was literally Biden and Hunter. It's both of them motherfuckers. Like
the reason why they react so visceral to the story, because especially the people that actually Democratic operatives are actually in the game, who got skin in the game, because they've been a part of this their entire career. Yep. Like Nancy Pelosi's daughters right now is being groomed to be the next Nancy Pelosi. And I mean, if you look
AOC is being groomed to be what?
Huh? Like
I said, you said AOC is being groomed to be what?
But this is how they play their game. Yeah, that's how they. So when they see Hunter Biden's situation, they're like, "What? This is just standard. You get in office, your family enriches themselves because of that. This is how politics works. That is what it is. I get a Senate seat, and my kid get a board also for an energy company. So they don't even see what's wrong with that scenario. While meanwhile, everyone else with common sense who are good faith actors are looking at it like, okay, so Biden is massively corrupt. Just like when Hillary Clinton was doing the Clinton Foundation, this is what I was telling people all the time. Like I'm 100% all on board on Trump is 100% corrupt train. I'm all aboard that. Yeah. But how can you talk about Trump?
It's common sense. We never stop hearing about it.
Yeah. How can you talk about Republican corruption and you think the Clinton Foundation isn't corrupt?
Yeah. Like, when by the way, the moment she lost, she shut down the global initiative. She shut it down because oh shit, well we can't do anything for you no more, or they can't do anything. They were like, we don't need you, so their money was done. They dried up, and that's what happens. Real quick, Emblemed Fate, thank you very much for the super chat. Niko, what's your take on Pan-Africanism? I believe blacks won't get respect until we have an independent force. That's why they destroyed Libya. What about you? I'm like, so I definitely believe that we need an independent force. Like we need an independent. I mean, we need basically what's effectively the newest version of Black Panthers, but not the new Black Panthers though. That's kind of like they're a little bit unorganized and like they get a little bit too involved in the party politics so much, a little bit too much for my liking. Like we need something independent of that is like, yo, we don't really care which one of you will win. What we care about is like fighting you once you get in office. And we're going to put out our demands and we're going to hold y'all accountable every step of the way. And if you really want our vote, you better say the right things when we put the right things out, acknowledge our presence, acknowledge what we're trying to do, or we're not going to give you shit. Like the ADOS movement did a very good job of starting the conversation of like how Black people do deserve a lot of reconciliation in the form of, you know, reparations is really just one form of reconciliation that needs to be given out. Because like people have no idea just how fucked this situation is. I'm talking about to the degree, I'm doing an investigative piece right now where I'm trying to figure out what the name of the bank on Black Wall Street was, because it doesn't exist apparently. Like one of my supporters went up to Greenwood where Black Wall Street was like was looking at the deed, and I had another one who is a historian look up the deeds for the bank for Black Wall Street. Nothing comes up. And when you start doing the math, like, hold on, how come we didn't hear about Black Wall Street until like 4 or 5 years ago? Like, that's basically when it started getting talked about. That's a new topic. And then, of course, you start figuring out, what happened? Oh, it was a race riot. I'm like, okay, whatever. Like, that's like the normal excuse for some shit like that. But then you figure out that motherfucker, the National Guard came in and bombed their ass. Bombed their shit. And you're like, hold up. For a motherfucker touching a white woman in an elevator, which I think ended up being proven false anyway, which everybody knows. Like, y'all bombed the motherfucker for that. Don't make no sense, bro. That's what we call cover up shit. That's what I call cover up, because just a few years before that, the Federal Reserve was established. 3 months after the destruction of Black Wall Street, the national budget was established, and then within a 6 to 8 month period of Black Wall Street happened, Oklahoma City established its version of the Fed. So you're talking about the richest place full of black people in the country, with where the Fed had not been fully established yet, on the crux of the 1920s, also known as the Roaring '20s, where banks were fucking booming. And guess what the only types of banks were? Even though Black Wall Street got destroyed in 1921, most of the banks that survived the Great Depression were black banks, and FDR first forced them to close anyway. FDR used a bunch of policies to make sure there would never be another Black Wall Street again. Like, it's that fucking bad. And if you figure out something like, I'm gonna figure that shit out. I always figure the shit out. And if I found out there was another fucking bank there, like, that basically could have competed with the Fed, people have no idea how fucking serious this shit is, bro. Like, you're talking about a bank that would have grown during the Roaring '20s, just like JP Morgan and Chase and them, without the downfall from the Depression, because we survived. And then all of a sudden, well, now you can't be fucking with interest rates like that. If I don't want to go through Wells Fargo, JP Morgan, whatever, then I can just go through a black bank. And then we also know how the bank they meld themselves with the national government to fund operations overseas, usually to crush socialist regimes, usually to crush black and brown and indigenous uprisings, right? So what happens when black people can fund the other side? Because we got banks too, bitch. What happens when y'all can't see nothing we are doing? What happens when y'all can't keep track of nothing? You can't audit shit outside of what that bank pays the taxes. But like, you don't have any control over it. And all like black people's livelihood, everything looks completely different just if that bank was able to survive. So now you're talking about, like, there's clearly a very specific agenda. Like, yeah, Latinos come here and they get shit, right? They get a lot of shit, but because we destroy their country. But the reason is because we really don't want people to know just how bad we're devastating their nations, because it is for resources. But with black people, it's a little different. What they don't want us to know, like the way that Jewish people have found success in this country and around the world, black people could have done that and more. And we were finding success more than a lot of working class white people in the middle of segregation. So imagine what would happen if that bank was able to develop, at least the alleged bank was able to develop in what it, like, I mean, basically what Killer Mike and them are doing with the Greenwood Bank that was inspired by Black Wall Street today. Like, imagine if that was allowed almost 100 years ago, bro. It's crazy. And so, but that goes back to, like I said, what we were just talking about. When you look at the history, like people, they're surprised when I use FDR to, like, his policies to argue for reparations. They can't believe it. They're like, really? FDR? I'm like, yes. Yeah. Redlining, FDR. Built it into the into the New Deal. Denying loans to black people, FDR. Built it into the New Deal. This is fact, bro. Go ahead.
Yep. And I actually brought that up to a lot of people, because I'm like, I like I think running on FDR probably was a good political decision. But whenever I heard it, because I know, like, some of the things you bring up, how a lot of black American families was left out of the recovery that FDR rolled up himself. So I'm like, man, he kind of an instrument of income inequality, racial income inequality. So I was like, man, I get you guys want to win that white working class that we didn't necessarily really won. Mm-hmm. But I never been a fan of FDR. Never. Japanese internment camps, destroying black wealth. It was like, man, I never been a big pusher of that guy. But I'm like, man, I get it. You guys, you trying to win a certain demographic. I mean, in hindsight, we maybe should try a different strategy, like I was saying. But
I mean, in hindsight, just be your goddamn self, bro. Like, why run on being somebody? Like, that's such a. I mean, I hate to say it's like a white progressive thing, but it's kind of a white progressive thing. They believe that, oh, I gotta compare myself. It's, bro, it was a "Make America Great Again" strategy, right? Real talk. To go back out. That's it. I mean, what else could it have been? It was a different way of saying it, because you were just, like Trump was arguing for populist policies from a conservative or Republican standpoint. Bernie did the same thing. It was obviously for more altruistic reasons, but it was still a "Make America Great Again" thing. Forgetting, motherfucker, it was still not great for everybody. I don't know why y'all keep forgetting this shit. You could say FDR. I want to go back to the FDR Democrats. I want to make America great again. Well, motherfucker, what about us? All these votes that y'all asking for, now everybody going crazy over these black votes is wild to see. But I mean, I ain't never felt like such a commodity in my goddamn life. I ain't gonna lie to you. Like, everybody going after our vote nowadays. But yeah, like, what about us, bro? Nobody want to talk about Henry Wallace, his VP that got cheated specifically because he wanted to desegregate the country, and he was talking about he's like, when I'm the president, Great Britain's colonies are not getting our help. They're not keeping their colonies with our help. We're pulling everybody. We're pulling the funding. We're not putting up with that bullshit. We're pulling out of these countries. We're not going to be doing this. We're not going to be doing it. Like, why don't we talk about Henry Wallace then? If we're going to talk about FDR. Because all anybody ever remembers is Truman.
Yep.
And there's a reason for that. It's like, why motherfuckers didn't talk about Kareem. People just started talking about Kareem, like giving him the GOAT status, potentially the GOAT status that he deserved. Because when he became Kareem, he was Lou Alcindor. Prior to that, right? Lou Alcindor? I want to say Lou. Is Lou something? Lou Cinder. But
I wish I knew.
But that's who he was before he became Kareem. And when he became Kareem, obviously it was part of this time period where Ali was becoming Muhammad Ali and speaking out against the Vietnam War. And Ali, Kareem, and a couple of others were all, like, I think, in a picture together speaking out against the Vietnam War. And they didn't want that type of dissent to become normal. In the NBA.
Back when our black celebrities actually had a spine that would actually stand for something, then they made an example out of their ass. They made an example out of a few. Now I don't know how to stand in line, fall in line now for the brand. Very unfortunate, because I just learned about a lot of like Korean political stances and activism very recently, and I talked to all my friends on Black Rose about this. How, like, you got to kind of educate yourself on the history of our black leaders. And this is the propaganda they do on purpose, because, like, I tell my friend Jackie this, and she cracks up, like, bro, I barely knew who Fred Hampton was until a few years ago. And I'm like, bro, you can call me for that. I take responsibility for that. But at the same time, bro, my school never covered that nigga.
Bro, we were not allowed to learn about Fred Hampton. Because you literally have to admit the government got him killed. That's how the story ends. And it's nothing controversial about that statement. But then you're like, and I went to high school in the South too. I went to high school and middle school in the South. So, like, they weren't going to talk about that shit, bro. They weren't going to talk about that. We only got to learn, we were taught. I distinctively remember in the history books, after we learned about Malcolm X and Martin Luther King, that, like, there was this really weird, like, it was almost like I don't want to call it animosity towards Malcolm X. We were like, oh man, that's not a good way to handle situations. That's not a good way to act. Like, Martin Luther King probably had the right idea, right? It should always be peaceful. Malcolm X was a little bit too extreme. Like, I remember feeling like that, and everybody in the class, because that's how the history books pitched it. And you didn't know by the time they died, they felt actually very close to each other. Like, they were very close in views by the time they both died.
Absolutely. Dude, I remember in school, they literally was telling us, like, MLK, that's the good one, MLK, the bad one. Like, that was the heavy implication on almost every single lecture. I didn't know shit about Malcolm X until I was like in my early 20s. Like, really, like I knew like the very basics.
Real shit about him. Yeah,
they don't cover him at all. And then I remember there was what got me like really into politics is I did a big history dive because my public education was so horrendous. Like, I didn't even realize how bad it was until my 20s. Like, I could even tell you it was bad, but I couldn't tell you why. Now I can tell you exactly why. Because there was a point where I got into history because I had my second year in college. I wish I remember my teacher's name. I'm not one of the people that like, I don't remember the dude's name. This dude was phenomenal. He was a phenomenal history teacher. And he didn't held shit back. I mean, he was talking about like the crimes of U.S. He was talking about the crimes of the U.S. Everyone had that first college history class. We're like, wow, I didn't know that shit. I remember I had this class with his teacher, and it changed my complete perspective on how the world works almost. Because we talk about a lot of things in history that I didn't even know he was even a thing in public education. Like when my public education, we covered like the most basic history, like Civil War,
Bro, in America, you study the same fucking shit for like basically from your 6th grade year until you graduate from your senior year. Like you talked about the same exact situations every single year, bro. It's like after your 8th grade year, it's like the most useless class.
And they didn't even cover it good either.
Y'all got names and dates right, and y'all not, and even that is like kind of sketch. Like how you learn about like the assembly line with Henry Ford, but don't talk about the fact a black man invented the fucking car. Like how does that just get glossed over? Like, but that's what they do, right? Real quick, guys, super chat. And before you say, I'm not talking about here. I'm talking about embracing our roots, reviving the Malcolm Pan-African Afro movement. Yo, you know what's crazy about that, bro? My ass is dead ass thinking about moving to Ghana. I'm dead ass thinking about that shit. Like I've been looking up either in the moving in Ghana or Barbados. But the issue is you can't do a mass exodus. And this is just my perspective, right? And it's probably because of how deep I'm involved into all this like activism shit. But like if the brightest minds of the black community leave, which like just happen to be some of the brightest minds in the country simultaneously, the brightest anti-imperialist minds, the brightest anti-capitalist minds, these people are like just brilliant. If they all leave, then you're leaving it up to a bunch of people we already know what the answer is going, like where they're going to lead the country, and it's going to end up back in Africa, right? Especially because you're going to take the brightest minds and you're going to build up Africa as we should. But then we're going to be fucking like, you're going to be invaded. Like they're going to amp it up, and they're going to join Europe or Eastern and Western Europe. And they're going to have Saudi Arabia and Israel join forces as well. And they're going to fucking ravage through Africa worse than they already are. So like, I mean, like if you ready to go to war like that, like, hey, I feel that, like, I got you. Like, I'm not like really discounting that. Like if you're ready to fight for yours, then yes. But we can't really ignore, like, if I leave here, like I might be straight, but like my brothers and sisters in Mexico and Guatemala and Honduras and Brazil, and like what we're doing there doesn't stop, and they can't go back. Ain't no pan-Brazilian movement because we fucked their country up already. Like that's why their inflation and shit's so horrible. Like there ain't no pan-Honduran or pan-Bolivian, or like they can't do it because we fucked their country up. And at a certain point, like I feel like I have a responsibility to help Black people because of my experiences, but I also have a responsibility. I feel like I have a responsibility to them because I feel like my lack of education, and then the generation before me and their lack of education, then the generation before me, and which actually probably wasn't that uneducated, they just didn't have the resources, but the generation before them and maybe their lack of education is how we, like, that cyclical mindset is how their countries are being ravaged. Because like we see what's happening in Africa, but because of our disconnect from Africa, we just ignored it, or we didn't care as much about it. But now I feel like there's this awakening across the board where people are starting to see the patterns. And really what it comes down to, like working class people get treated like shit. Cool. Working class people of color, we get treated like shit, and then our country's invaded, then our resources stolen, and they'll say it's because, well, that shouldn't have been a socialist country. Well then, bitch, go steal Denmark's resources. Oh no, we can't do that. Why? Tell me why. You know, the Gaddafi was the elected chairman of the African Union, right? You know that before he got killed. Yeah, he was an elected chairman. He said at the last meeting before he got killed, he said that he was going to step down. He's going to step down as leader of Libya, because he said if it keeps the West in America out of Africa, then I'll do whatever I have to do to protect my homeland. That's what he said. That's when we went after that motherfucker. Like, no, he got to go now, because what excuse do we have to be there at that point, right? Like, so we assassinate him. Could you imagine us just assassinating the leader of the EU, the chairman of the EU, just like pop up?
They have no respect for the sovereignty of countries that doesn't look like them. That's exactly what it is. Because you said the same thing. You just brought it up. Like, you can find an issue with any country and use that as a justification to invade them and to install a new government. But they always look at African countries, always look at South American countries because they don't see them as equals as us. Because this is something that actually Putin says all the time that a lot of people don't realize. America, because our dysfunctional country, we are not allowed to be the moral police over anyone. Because people ask Putin about his civil rights violations, which I condemn. He has his issues. Russia has massive issues.
Yeah,
with the
can
country.
y'all believe that Putin was as socially conservative as like every president ever?
Exactly.
Can you believe that?
So when we have Western journalists calling Putin and they ask him about his civil rights violations, do you know what his response usually is?
What?
It's actually pretty brilliant. He always say, "How can the Americans criticize me for however in my country when you guys are killing black people in the streets?"
Yeah.
And when he says that,
he's right.
It shuts them up. I mean, you can call him a hypocrite if you want, whatever.
But yeah, he's like, not wrong. But he's not lying. That's what's fun.
Yeah.
Man, he's a master of propaganda. Hold up, but y'all are killing people in the streets. Y'all
exactly.
Like y'all literally are. Like, look at what happened with Breonna Taylor. Like, what the? Y'all put a police unit together to gentrify the area, and the whole goal is to get black people out of the houses, regardless of how you have to do it. And like literally, the wall got more justice than Breonna Taylor, and then Daniel Cameron goes up there and lies, saying that the jury agreed that they shouldn't prosecute her. But they never had the opportunity, prosecute the cops that killed her. But they never had the opportunity to do it. And a juror had to come out and basically blow the whistle on the shit. And y'all worried about Putin? But y'all gonna line up to go fucking to protest this judge. Like, that bitch gonna do the same thing that all the other judges been doing. Exactly. Last time I checked, can anybody remember what the bench leaned whenever Citizens United was passed or was killed? And like, everybody like, hold up. No, I can't remember why. Because you would think it's a conservative, right? You would think that based off of how they talk now. Just like people don't realize that the bench was almost half Republican when Roe was passed. They don't know that. But Roe was passed. Like RGB said it herself that she was under the impression that everybody understood they didn't want undesirable populations getting too big. That was her words. So like all the major issues that fuck up this country, almost all of it, like there's no such thing as a liberal judge or conservative judge. Maybe a socially liberal, but all of them are really socially conservative. But really, at the end of the day, all of them basically are socially conservative. But like, only thing we lost by RGB dying is like now white women are a little bit less, like they're a little bit more concerned about their abortion rights. Like that's about it.
It's finally affecting them, and that's the problem I have with a lot of these white liberals and white progressives. They don't really care about issues unless it affects them. Mm-hmm. I realize this, and once again, a lot of people I consider myself allies for the last few years, being a big Bernie supporter. But I realize like a lot of I've seen through a lot of them recently.
Yeah,
especially ever since the era where they pushed Joe Biden. Like everything is super a big deal, and everything's not as big of a deal until it affects them. Now, for example, I didn't know this until recently. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, she used the doctrine of discovery as a way to rule for oil pipelines in Native American communities.
Yes.
So it's like, bro, that is as horrific as a judge decision as you possibly get. Because the doctrine of discovery was used as justification to take Native American lands hundreds of years ago, and that's the rationale she used to vote for to make a pro corporate vote. And this is why I bring up to people all the time. This is why you can't use the Supreme Court to fearmonger me, because as you mentioned before, we already lost the Supreme Court. Like there's no winning the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is pro corporate. It's pro-oligarchy, and no matter what, if a Democrat or Republican picks Supreme Court justice, we're fucked anyway, unless it affects the small issue that you care about.
We gotta talk about this shit. This David Atkins tweet, bro. Speaking of Putin, got to, because this shit's hilarious. I don't know if you can see it, but it says, I think you retweeted earlier. He said, do Bernie partisans, whatever the fuck that means, by the way.
Yeah, like what?
Bernie, no, like Bernie, what he did is appreciated, bro. Bernie ain't. There's no such thing as a Bernie partisan no more. Like,
dude, whenever these people bring up like Bernie to me, I'm like, and I'm not as big as a Bernie supporter you can find on Twitter. But when people bring up Bernie to me, I'm like, Bernie who?
I was a Tulsa surrogate and people still bring up Bernie to me. Like they're like, well, Bernie said, huh? what the fuck I got to do with anything I just said?
I'm like, who? You mean the senator from Vermont? that nigga's not relevant to my life no more, bro.
Right? Exactly. So it says, do Bernie partisans not understand that if Bernie were the nominee, Putin would have hacked David's or Brianna's or Jane's emails or whatever, and that it would have done real damage? What would have been the damage? I'm so confused. What would have been the damage? It would have been just talking shit about the DNC, like, so it would have been a damage to the DNC. What would have been
opposite?
Yeah, like, I'm like, bro, they might have got more popular.
You know how Hillary, her emails came out, and that was devastating for her campaign. Like, I feel like if Bernie internal emails came out, it would only help him. It'd be like, you probably see Bernie typing some shit email that we wish he would say. He doesn't. Yeah, exactly. Like, bro. So I can't imagine what he expects us to find here, because when I'm looking at a lot of the WikiLeaks emails that really hurt and damaged the Obama and Hillary Clinton brand. For example, the one that always stood to me is the WikiLeaks email, where it pretty much laid out how Obama cabinet was picked by Wall Street. So when I saw that, I'm like, okay, that's a very, very damning. That's a damning email. What damning email can you find on Bernie? Like, I think
they had one where he basically the most damning things, in my opinion, are like what he allowed his staff to do or like get away with, and then like subsequently rehired them. Like that was my thing. That was what I was the most mad about. But like Bernie himself, first of all, like I'm not sure when the last time Bernie himself actually sent the goddamn email. So like there's that. But like like dude 86 years old. Like I'm not sure he out here just email. He got staff for that shit, right? So James actually pretty social media savvy, but I don't think Bernie out here doing that. Like, and Jane, if you see some of Jane's emails, y'all don't know, Jane is more anti-establishment than Bernie is. Like, if Jane wanted Bernie to go third party, like she was the one.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, bro. At the People's Summit. Like, I spoke at a panel at the People's Summit. Actually, it was Levy. It was his son's panel that he was hosting. And like, but during like the main event, like Jane and Roseanne DeMauro were like talking about like we're trying to get Bernie to go to the People's Party back then.
Word.
Yeah, bro.
That makes sense, man. Anyone had that? Like Bernie got that ride or die shit.
Yeah,
Bernie trying to do the right thing, what he thinks is the right thing, I should say, as a senator. But then he got a chick like, no, fuck these motherfuckers, they screwed you. Go with third party. So damn, Jane's down, man.
That's bro. Yeah, I've been the biggest fan of Jane forever. Like I'm always gonna have love for Jane. That's why her and Tulsi and Nina like get along so well. Like it's because, you know, even though they all ended up having to take kind of like diverging paths by the time the election kind of started, but like at the end of the day, they all kind of came together. And like obviously Jane was with Bernie, but then Nina, like people don't realize Nina unendorsed Hillary in 2016. Unendorsed that bitch.
Yep, that got her on the hit list.
Yeah,
pretty much.
And Tulsi hadn't endorsed anybody yet, but as vice chairwoman of the Democratic National Committee, they were like, well, I hope you endorse her soon. And then she just like threw caution into the wind and said, fuck that. I'm not only not going to endorse her, I'm going to quit the vice chair position, endorse Bernie, go campaign for the man, and then spend the next, you know, basically 5 years roasting y'all. Like, and that's like but they all have that in common, where they kind of all had something like that FBI investigation into Jane. That was a hit attempt on her and Bernie.
It was obvious.
It was so bad. They were like trying to blame her for things that like the whole board had to approve of. And the board member was like, we all approve of this stuff. What are y'all talking about? Like that, anything that might have looked suspicious, we all approved of it, and it wasn't suspicious at the time. Like nothing. And if you go back and look at the shit, like deep dive, it's like, oh, man, this is stupid. Why? But it was because they were trying to bully this woman. That's what they were doing, to try to make sure that Bernie continued to play ball. And then of course Nina. I mean, what they sent every damn black person in neoliberal media after Nina, because of how she just was like, nah, bro, we gotta get off the Democratic plantation. And then of course we already know what happened with Tulsi. And this is why I be getting on y'all motherfuckers on Twitter. I'm gonna tell you why. Because when you got people like AOC who came after 2016, all they stood to get was benefits from Bernie's movement without actually making the sacrifice that everybody else made, like Nina, like Tulsi, like Bernie himself, even like Jane, for being just one of the, like, she was apparently his lead consultant in the first race. Like, when you get to come after, you got all the benefits, but you have to make the sacrifices, which means you're more willing to capitulate because you never had to lose anything. You never had that threat.
Yeah, that's a good point, man. And I actually brought that up before because I I I started becoming very critical of the squad. A lot of people got upset, but they've been pretty upsetting ever since Bernie dropped out. And I made an observation that I've seen being true because I'm like,
It's gotten worse too. It
it's
got worse.
easy, yeah, it's easy to be the anti-establishment up and comer when you have a giant titan of a leader known as Bernie Sanders in front of you. But
Mm-hmm.
now, ever since Bernie Sanders dropped out and he's not like the titan that he used to be, now the focus goes to where? The focus is going to AOC. The focus is
But
going
it's
on the
because they weren't,
squad.
and it's because they weren't like my thing is so like with Tulsi, like whenever Bernie or she was supporting Bernie in 2016, she was introducing legislation. When she stopped supporting Bernie, she was introducing legislation. When she decided to run for office, she would introduce more legislation. Or for president, and after Bernie left, introduce legislation. That's what she focuses on. That's why she don't be on Twitter like that no more. But AOC and Ayana's like, and she does introduce a little bit of legislation. I can't even stunt, but like she got her problems just from a moral consistency standpoint. But like Elon, every now and then will introduce legislation. And Rashida's the best out of the squad. Like I will
Yeah.
give her that. But like that's also why you don't see her kissing Biden's ass like that. But you
Isn't
see,
she the only one who did endorse him?
I think she's the only one who hasn't endorsed them. I think you're right. But like the other three, they weren't really working like that until it was time for their elections to pop up, and then they had to start talking about all the stuff that they actually wanted to do. They weren't working. They were working, but they weren't working. You feel me?
Yeah.
Like, and
Yeah, as I
that
mentioned,
matters when you're talking about like, okay, where do we go next? Because the activists and the anti-establishment people were introducing legislation, calling motherfuckers out for the CARES Act. But only time AOC want to get in front of a camera is really when it's to defend herself.
yeah, it's like those. And when you see her Senate speeches, what I think is really great when you see her like grilling someone on the floor like a Wall Street banker. But
Mm-hmm.
while I try to tell people like that doesn't lead to anything. Like what happens when you get LC that she'll grill some corrupt person on the Senate floor or whatever, and then what comes from that? Like those bankers are more than happy to take a grilling for AOC just to take a slap on the wrist later. So I'm like, what is actually being done? Like
They
how are
probably
you actually
giggling.
challenging the power itself?
Bro,
So
what banking legislation since the that interest limit bullshit that her and Bernie introduced? Like, what has she done since? And she's on that committee. Because that's a lot of people were saying, oh well, she's on the defense for not supporting the off or introducing subsequent legislation since the shitty ass Green New Deal 12 bullet point that doesn't even ban fracking resolution. Like she hasn't introduced any bill to substantiate or corroborate that legislation since. And she kept saying it's a grand plan. It's so we can add and add and add. I'm like, okay, so why not support the Off Act, which is the Off Fossil Fuels Act? Why
did
not?
she run on that?
Huh?
Did she run on
She
that?
ran on
Like
Off
what?
Act. Yes,
Yeah,
she ran on it because and every progressive running in 2018 ran on it because over 400 climate and environmental organizations also supported it, and they were putting the word out. Y'all got to support the legislation if you want our endorsement. So like, but because Tulsi at the time, well, especially at the time, like she's not I don't want the clout. She didn't make it like a big deal and like start doing all this extra shit like with the green. Because she was like, it's about the legislation. I'm glad that it's just a policy that's taken off. That's the type of person she is. With AOC, she wanted credit for the Green New Deal that didn't do anything. Like, bro, even the fucking, like, the Senate, like, Bernie and Tulsi didn't vote for it in the Senate. And then the rest of the Democrats didn't vote for it because Nancy Pelosi was like, it's gonna be used against us, against Republicans. And they don't want it to be used as a talking point. I'm like, the only two cases that would make sense is if you think that it's shit, right? Like, that's the only reason. Like, that's because why you can't, like, could you imagine? Oh man, they want to fix the environment and shit. And like, that's a bad thing. Like, no, that's a bit bad argument. Or it is so good that you don't want it to be used against you by a progressive Democrat running against you as a corporate Democrat. Those are only two scenarios, and basically none of those are good. Like, if you're avoiding any of those, that's not a good thing. So it wasn't even good enough for Bernie or Tulsi. Tulsi didn't vote for it in the House because it didn't go far enough. Bernie didn't vote for it in the Senate for the same reason. That's why he introduced his own Green New Deal as a policy that was nothing like AOC's and actually did ban fracking.
yeah, and this is where this is why I've been going after squad recently, because there's a certain point where my tolerance ends. Like everyone got a certain tolerance level. Now, when I see the squad come in their first term, I understand they can be tricky the first term. I get it. I still want you to challenge the establishment because that's your mandate. That's how you got your ass in office. You didn't get in office taking Wall Street money by make sure Democrats like you. You got in there because we voted for you. We donate you in mass. So you have a mandate to be anti-establishment. But okay, that aside. Okay, I get it. The first term is tricky. Now, if Biden wins, and this is why I'm going after the squad right now, not later. I'm going after him right now. If Biden wins, and I see the squad and Bernie Sanders continue the same shit where they're not calling the Democrats out by name, and to your point, they're not introducing counter progressive legislation, then I think it's time to have a serious conversation about whether we should trust these motherfuckers or not. I'm still, you can call me delusional if you want to, but I'm still like, man, I'm hoping once we get more people in there, they might step up, be a little bit more bold. Maybe once Trump is gone.
And that's true, right? So like, but it's easier to be bold when there's a bunch of people around you being bold.
I agree, brother.
But like Rashida Tlaib, remember whenever it was her, and then I think Jayapal and AOC on stage, and maybe Ilan too, when they were like Hillary, and they were like, and she was like, I don't know what she said, but basically she was like, fuck Hillary. Like that's basically what she said. Bro. And I was like, that's what I'm talking about. And she said that knowing like the other three would be uncomfortable, but AOC be praising Hillary. So like, how can you praise a person like that? Like, you supposedly, and that's her activism background, by the way, ain't really what people say it is. I was actually in Queens. Like, I was on the ground as an organizer, and all the Queens activists, like, to this day, I still keep in touch with them. Like, we all know each other. Because, like, we either work with each other through Bernie's campaign or through the Working Families Party, or some of them were part of my investigation up there. Like, we all know each other. And none of them they all don't really fuck with AOC like that. And they felt like that for a while, but they're so terrified to say anything that they just had to let shit go. And that's scary, bro. Because think about it like this. Somebody told me one time, they were like, man, AOC like the Trump of the left. I was like, what, bro? That's kind of a ridiculous statement. And then I thought about it, I'm like, bro, what's the unique power that Trump has always had? The independent conservatives but will pitch him as the anti-establishment, right? And nothing he can do is wrong. On the top of that, Fox News. So now the Fox News motherfucker is all on his Johnson. And they won't attack him. So now the only people who's being attacked by the left. And then what does that mean? Well, I don't like the left anyway. He's only being attacked because he's my friend. So AOC, independent progressives, kissing her ass nonstop. You're not allowed to talk about her. CNN, MSNBC, and them. When do you ever hear them say anything negative about AOC?
Not in a long time that I've seen.
The only ones that get to openly attack her are the Republicans. And then, but their attacks are so damn ridiculous, like the Democrats' attacks on Trump are so ridiculous that no one takes them seriously.
They don't land.
So she has a very specific type of insulation from criticism that allows her to just rise and rise and rise without being significantly challenged, without that person who challenges her just being just destroyed. Like, that's why they don't like, think about it, bro.
Yeah, that's exactly why I got more vocal, because as I mentioned, like, I had those 2 years of leniency. But now, like, a lot of the excuses you see a lot of people make for these progressive leaders, oh, they gotta get reelected. Oh, they can't hurt their democratic relationships. They are getting knocked down one by one. And let me explain why. So I get why in the first term why you gotta be careful, because you don't want to have giant funding towards your reelection bid, right? But what happened this election? The squad won all their re-election bids by a landslide. And despite massive amount of funding coming from right-wing groups against AOC in Ilhan. I don't know the exact funding against Rashida.
Oh, it was bad. It was a lot of funding against Rashida, and that was more at risk than any of the other three.
Yeah, I can only imagine how much it was. I just don't know on top of my head. But I know there was a massive amount of Ilhan against Ilhan and AOC. And they still won by a landslide.
Yeah. So somebody brought a brilliant point up. Anthony Reyes just said they won't even support Shahid Buttar. And for me, that's a big red flag, bro.
And they didn't support Jen Perlman in Florida either.
They did not support Jen Perlman.
Exactly. And that one I was like, what?
And I have my issues like with both of them, but they're both kind of like separate from like their policies. Like their policies are on point, and like
Yeah.
I got issues with like AOC and like but if they introduce a great policy, then I wouldn't pretend it didn't exist just because like I want to proposition myself to be against them. Like, but basically what you're telling me is you refuse to run against Debbie Wasserman Schultz or support anything against Debbie Wasserman Schultz because of her power and where she stands in the Democratic Party, and then you don't want to do anything against Nancy Pelosi because of Nancy Pelosi. You know, you don't want to hurt mama bear feelings.
Yeah, that's my original point because, like I said, I was excited about these progressive members in Congress. The reason why I was excited for them in the first place because I thought they would act different than standard.
Cori Bush.
They didn't. Yeah, exactly. I'm still super excited about her too.
But I'm saying they didn't support her. AOC didn't support her this time around.
Oh yeah. That's another thing that drove me crazy. But my thing is, people like, oh, like this is another excuse they use. Say, oh, well, they got to play the political game. It's like, bro, the reason why I supported you because you don't play the political game. Like you guys are going back in the circle. Like the reason why we support these candidates that don't take Wall Street cash is so they don't act like Wall Street politicians. So if you have these people that we support because they're supposed to be anti-establishment, but you're defending them when they make establishment actions, you just defeat the exact point we were trying to accomplish.
Yep. Somebody else said that their silence on Julian Assange. Their silence on Julian. But that's like how can y'all be silent on Julian Assange right now? And I mean, hell, AOC's damn near pro censorship at this point. With the shit she be saying, and like that's one of the things. So like whenever Tulsi talked about when she said Project Veritas provided indisputable evidence about ballot harvesting, she was correct. It was the evidence was there. The implication with Ilhan Omar was like that was dumb because it just didn't make any sense. She wouldn't need a ballot harvest because that district is dominantly Somali and they fucking love her. It wouldn't make any sense. It wouldn't benefit her. However, with that being said, the ballot harvesting was admitted on camera, and he thought, I don't say he thought he was doing something legal, but he probably thought he was doing something legal because ballot harvesting technically is legal in Minnesota, but you're only supposed to have 3 with you at any given time. And so ballot harvesting at that point all of a sudden became a partisan issue, despite the fact that the Republicans were found guilty of it in North Carolina just several months ago, which forced an entirely new election for the first time in generations. So, and guess who it was about to hurt? The Democrats. And nobody wants to talk about that. Like so AOC gaslighted. Oh, so you were talking shit about Ilhan. No, they work together. If anything, she should be talking shit about your ass because you're the one's been you've thrown her under the bus over and over again. Tulsi has done videos defending Ilhan when the fucking squad. I'm not gonna say that. Rashida Tlaib was defending her, but AOC. Remember whenever the Israel the AIPAC shit happened, AOC was disappeared from Twitter for 2 days, bro. But we were like, yo, where you at? You ain't gonna defend your friend? And then like 2 days later, she popped up because Trump said something finally, and they were like, "Oh my God, she apologized already." No, bitch, that's not the point. You missed the whole ass point. We don't think she owed anybody an apology because she told the truth about AIPAC. But when it's time to do the real dirty work that we elected them to do, like they keep failing us. Time and time and time again. And you don't have to hate them people. But why do you have to make an excuse every time they do? Because I don't never critique them. Well, now, maybe a little bit more now. But back then, I never would criticize them personally. Never. Because they all seem pretty cool. But whenever somebody says, hey, you're a little bit inconsistent on this policy stance. What's up with that? Oh my God, you must be a right-wing Russian bot. Ah, man, you must be. It's because you like Tulsi. No, actually, I mean, I like Tulsi as a candidate because of her support for her son and civil liberties and single payer and all that. And like that's why. I hope y'all realize that. That's why they're being critiqued. And now, because they're not insulated with Bernie, like you were saying earlier, they were able to kind of like ride Bernie's wave, but they're not insulated by Bernie anymore. And so it's like bit by bit by bit. You're starting to see the mask come off, and people are starting to be like, well, I can't even use Bernie as an excuse no more. He's not running.
Yeah, and I remember I told you that I had Ilhan as my profile picture on Twitter when I first started. I bring that up only because I want A1 to know I was as big a supporter of the squad as the AOC, as Ilhan, as anyone. But if you guys follow my timeline ever since the start of the summer, I mean, I go against them because I mentioned before, we had a certain mandate for them. And they're not following the mandate. For example, like we're in the middle of a homeless crisis. We have our government is abandoning people in this time of need. I mean, we about to have 30+ million Americans going homeless in the middle of the winter. And one of the most underreported crises that happen every year is the amount of homeless people that freeze to death every winter. Now, combine that with the fact that we have this homeless crisis coming up. Now, when is there a better time to act than this situation where the working class is literally facing one of the worst situations it's had since the first Great Depression? Now people say, "Oh, they gotta play politics. They gotta play politics. They can't call out Pelosi. They gotta be nice so we can win in the future." What future? What future are you talking about? Because there are people right now that don't have health care during the middle of a pandemic. We have a massive homeless crisis with a winter coming up. We have a homeless crisis, so there's about to be millions of people that freeze.
And a lot of people that don't know how to be homeless. They ain't had practice being homeless yet in the middle of winter. Real talk.
Yeah, exactly. I wouldn't know how to do that. And there was just an article I read a few weeks ago, and I'm like, I'll be reading these articles. I feel like I'm going crazy, bro, because I literally see like the establishment will admit that our system is falling apart and collapsing. Because this article was in CBS where they said there was a study that shows that 50 million Americans say they may go hungry by the end of this year. They don't have enough food to eat. So it's like, bro, if you're a progressive politician and you're not challenging your party when there's 50 million Americans going hungry, when there's 30 million Americans about to go homeless in the middle of winter, when winter about to start, in the middle of a pandemic where people are not getting rent relief, when are you? When are you? So that's why I mentioned earlier.
And there's like nothing negative that can come from you literally just screaming that shit out every single day as a congressperson. There's nothing negative that can come from that.
Yeah, literally.
And Nancy Pelosi's a fucking loser. She lost the goddamn house in the Senate. Like she's not a good like galvanizer of people, which is why every time she's the goddamn speaker of the house, they lose. They lose.
And there's so many people that repeat stupid ass old political jargon and groupthink. One thing that I hear all the time when I bring up the same thing you just brought up, Niko. I was like, why don't AOC just call out Nancy Pelosi? You know what the response is? Well, AOC can't do that because you gotta get the Democrats to work with you to help you get your legislation passed. I'm like, motherfucker, they're not doing that right now. Like, are you kidding me? They're not doing that right now, and they're not standing for the workers. They voted for a giant corporate bailout. It's like, bro, at what point do you draw the line in the sand?
Think about I think that people could agree that like as bad as Obama was, like Biden is worse. I think that everybody and then like people who hate Obama, they're like, yo, and that's one of the reasons that there's so many people who are avidly against Biden, right? So like Obama had the House, had a a filibuster-proof Senate, bro, a filibuster-proof Senate, and on top of that had the Supreme Court, and he was like, let's bail out the banks instead. And you're telling me we gave Obama everything plus a mandate.
Yeah.
Everything plus a mandate. I'm gonna say everything plus everything that like basically people wanted Bernie Sanders to have if he would have won. And we were in the negatives, bro. Like we ain't not get shit. We're in the negatives. And y'all want to give Biden everything with no mandate and half of a brain?
Doesn't make any sense. Because Biden literally bragged about being the Senate's most conservative Democrat in the 90s. Like when Bill Clinton was president.
He bragged about that shit like during the debates. I work with Republicans. I work with and like in the 80s and 90s though, but like specifically on segregation legislation. And now everybody's like, oh, we hate Republicans again. Or like, he won't do what the Republicans asked him to do. He literally bragged all primary about doing what Republicans asked him to do. He bragged about it. Y'all forgot? Well, no, it's different now because of Trump. Well, motherfucker, if you're going to take the same orders that the people who are ordering Trump to do shit, like what if you're going to take their orders, then why am I voting for Biden?
They literally had neoconservatives at the Democratic National Convention. I'm not talking about moderate Republicans. I'm not talking about people that
and the Massies and the Amashes. It ain't them.
Yeah, I'm talking about a hardcore homophobe in John Kasich who have constant legislation. He fought to make abortion rights harder to get in the state. He had multiple amendments that was going against the LGBT community when he governed. That's the guy who they elevated decent. And
or the pedophile, like, or Bill Clinton, the pedophile, like after the court documents come out.
We can go down the list, brother. We can go down the list. But it's crazy how we call crazy because we see the writing on the wall, which is going back to the conversation about the squad. It's like, bro, I'm putting pressure on them right now But if I see them being weak during the Biden administration, where they have no reason but to go all the way balls to walls against Joe Biden, what do you want me to say? Like anyone who's still following them, if they not, the only thing they can do
I'm
to
worried it's
really
gonna be too
redeem
late.
themselves, if they gotta go balls to like as soon as Biden wins. Let's say they just had Trump derangement syndrome. They're like, oh, I'm doing all this stuff because we gotta get rid of Trump. We got Trump derangement syndrome. I don't agree with that, but okay. If Biden wins and you guys are weak and you guys are scared to call Nancy Pelosi and Joe Biden, I'm waging war. I don't know what else to do. People need to wake up because I'm seeing the writing on the wall right now because we're seeing everything that, to me, this shit is common sense. When I see them butting up with neoconservatives, when I see them have Larry Summers on as an economic advisor, when I see them butting up with Rahm Emanuel, I see
Lincoln
the direction
Project.
of the party. Yeah, the link. And people think, oh, well, the Lincoln Project, they just trying to help them win the election. It's like, bro, the Lincoln Project is not putting in all these resources in for nothing.
Bro, it's a bunch of consultants looking for another job.
Yes.
Like, what, you think they're just so, like, just passionate about the direction of this country that they pulled in millions and millions and millions of dollars of resources to put in the guy that they actually want to be running shit? Like, these are a bunch of neocons. These are neocons that are saying we'd rather have Joe Biden. Think about that. That's literally saying, yeah, we know Trump is really bad and we know that he's gone really far, but he hasn't gone far enough for us. We want somebody worse. Do you understand that, people? That's crazy. People were like, man, Lincoln Project, yes. They were like, Ilhan Omar tweeted the Lincoln Project right that she was complaining about the fucking Project Veritas shit. I'm like, bro, what is going on?
No. No.
Like, and everybody's like, no, that's different though. That's different. Why?
Man, it's like people ask me, cause I use the term Trump derangement syndrome because I think it's fucking funny. But,
you use what?
I use the term Trump derangement syndrome because I think it's funny as hell. Like whenever, like people get mad, like whenever I use like right wing attacks, like bro, that shit's true. It's true. Like I tell black people get off the damn plantation.
Yeah, right. If I can tell black people to get off the plantation, why can't I call white women?
Like, bro, I'm gonna use that because that shit's on point. So it's like people ask me why do I use the term Trump derangement syndrome? What I mean by that? Trump is awful. How can someone have Trump derangement syndrome? He's actually awful. Trump derangement syndrome is the syndrome that robs people of their critical thinking skills. It robs them of all their previous knowledge about politics. For example, I literally see progressives quote Joe Biden's platform to me as a reason to vote for him, as if Joe Biden is not a serial liar, as if platforms ever meant anything to anyone. Ever. Like you see
bro, he changes his website every week. I swear to God, bro.
Yeah, and those same people will be like, well, the Project Lincoln, they just doing this because they care about the country. They just want Trump gone. They don't want to. You see what I'm talking about when I say Trump derangement syndrome? Like the Trump derangement syndrome makes people lose basic comments. Well, they start viewing politics like a cartoon. Like for example, I was talking about this with a friend. Like, bro, you understand the corrupting influence of money in politics, right? We all do as people of the left. But somehow the corrupting influence of money in politics is not going to affect Joe Biden when he got $100 billion donors. Yeah. And these people are saying we're going to push him to the left. You see how this basic common sense shit escapes their brain?
Or when he said, well, if somebody gives me $200,000 during my campaign and they want to offer me some advice when I become president, I'm going to probably take their advice and hear what they got to say. Bro, I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? And they're like, no, it's like, man, bro, it's one thing.
Like, bro, it's one thing if you hear this shit from liberals because this is what we fucking expect out of them. I'm hearing this from people I respect. And I'm hearing this stupid shit from people that are politically aligned with me on 90% of the issues. I'm seeing them say stupid shit. like the Project Lincoln. Go ahead.
I want to say this too, cause I have to wrap up and it's actually going on another show. But it really comes down to this, right? You don't know, like these protests that we are seeing right now, and that's just the state of decay that our country is in, is being put on Front Street, and like all of a sudden people want to acknowledge police brutality. All of a sudden people want to at least half-ass acknowledge racism. All of a sudden people want to challenge the president instead of just being best friends with him, like we saw with Obama. All of a sudden, all of this stuff is like, we're actually challenging fascism now, and it's becoming like damn near pop culture to do it, right? But if Biden becomes the president, that's civility fascism, and people all like laughed at me when I talked about civility. I said, nah, see, civility fascism is fascism that you're not allowed to challenge. And I thought it was going to happen January, February of 2021 if Biden won. Nah, bro. We just saw a link to his son's, laptop and the emails and shit was blocked by Twitter and Facebook. Not because it was untrue, but because they said they kind of thought that it might have been potentially untrue, but we can't prove that it is true, and therefore we have to block the link. Mind you, a week before that, Trump's taxes actually got hacked, and they had no problem posting all those articles and allowed all those articles to get posted. In other words, you are not even allowed to challenge the fascism of Joe Biden, people. You will not be allowed to know. Like, people didn't know that a bunch of protesters either got killed or kidnapped in Ferguson. Like, the protest leaders were killed or kidnapped in Ferguson. Yep. Like, they didn't know what was happening at Standing Rock. Like, they didn't know any of this stuff was going on. They didn't know that it was open slave trade in Libya. They didn't know that Obama was basically facilitating the funding of neo-Nazis in the Ukraine. They didn't know any of this because of who was president. Now, and that was a time where the mainstream media wasn't really ultra diligent, and where the establishment wasn't ultra diligent. Now they are ultra diligent. Yep. And they crossed the line when they did that. They're basically saying, nah, you can challenge that fascism, but don't come over here during this because this is the fascism that makes us the most money, and we can't have you fucking with that.
Yep, and this is something that I've been warning people about as well. It's like, man, you're gonna see a lot of people take Black Lives Matter out of their bio as soon as Joe Biden wins this election. You're gonna see it, and people, and I think this story with Hunter Biden and with Twitter and Facebook ban, I think that's something the left should constantly talk about, because they willing to do that. Like, for example, look at the situation that we're in right now. Joe Biden is up on Trump massively in the polls. Mm-hmm. He's like, if you go by the establishment ways of telling the election, he's the massive favorite to win, and I think personally he's gonna win. Just looking at the political,
it's starting to look like that. It didn't look like that in the beginning, but it's really starting to look like that.
So, in a situation where Joe Biden is about to win, where he loses almost nothing, because I don't think this Hunter Biden attack, even though it's open corruption, I don't think that even moves the needle. It doesn't even move the needle this election. Like, no one who's voting for Joe Biden is going to change their mind when they see the Hunter Biden story. Let's be honest.
But and people who might have voted, maybe people who are thinking about voting for him, would just probably not vote.
Yeah, that's possible. My point is, this story doesn't really hurt their power that much, and they suppressed it. Imagine what's going to happen under Joe Biden's administration when they kick off their plan to do the Venezuela coup. Yeah. Like, imagine the media when Joe Biden and his campaign decides to ramp up tensions against Iran.
And imagine when they're much more efficient at shit like that, by the way.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. This is what I'm afraid of. When people are like, oh, you're not scared of Trump winning? Bro, I'm scared of Biden winning, because he's going to have complete media complicity the way we've never seen before. Because when they banned the Hunter Biden story, like, I know how much the media is in the tank for Joe Biden, and even I was shocked by that. I was like, bro, I didn't know they would go that far. Like, I don't be honest, I didn't even know they would go that far.
Bro, I didn't think they would go like that. I didn't think they would do like that, bro. And then the excuses were even worse. So that's how you know they knew they were wrong, and they came out with excuses for it. Like,
yeah, and now imagine, once again, the only reason I bring up the fact that I don't think that's going to be relevant is because, once again, that doesn't challenge their power at the end of the day. Imagine when there's a story that comes out that will challenge the neoliberal power when Biden's in charge. Imagine if there's a massive leak. Imagine if there's something that comes out that will expose massive Biden administration corruption. And I didn't know they would go that far on Hunter, so how far they wanted to go to cover up for Joe Biden to prevent another Trump from winning, to prevent another Bernie Sanders from rising in the Democratic Party. And this is why I tell people about the Trump derangement syndrome. The Trump derangement syndrome stops them from thinking in the long term, and it stops them from doing this critical analysis that we're doing right now. Because if they're censoring a basic story like that, they're going to censor another drone strike that might hit a wedding. Like, where Joe Biden hit a wedding. They're not going to allow that shit on Twitter or Facebook. You know what I mean? Like, this is the kind of stuff I see.
Or they'll even lie about it.
Huh?
Or they'll lie. Like, they lied about, like, they said they literally posted a Washington Post story, and Twitter used it as, Washington Post reports Joe Biden never tried to fire the Ukrainian prosecutor, except for there's a video of him bragging successfully threatening to withhold $1 billion from Ukraine unless they fire the prosecutor, and then of course subsequently they fired the prosecutor. He bragged about it, and they're like, no, it never happened. Never happened.
Yeah, I don't think people understand how bleak this is going to get. And I say this because the reason I say this is because, once again, I was caught off guard by that Hunter Biden story. Even I didn't think they would stick that low, but they did. So how low are they going to stoop during the Biden administration, especially when he's not going to be one really in charge? This is the kind of stuff that scares me. Like, people look at everything so binary. We gotta get rid of Trump. Trump is bad. Trump is bad. Like, bro, Brian's gonna be just as bad. You just shifting the harm.
Yep.
That's all you're doing. That's all that's a good point that Jackie posed, bro. I love she like only thing that you're doing, you're not doing going for lesser two evil. You're just shifting harm. You make sure that you get your abortion protection, but at the same time, you got an administration that's gonna be more hawkish on Venezuela, more hawkish on Russia, who to put more sanctions on Iran. They're gonna hurt the Iran medical. Like you got all this stuff that's gonna go on. All these people that are gonna be hurt. You got Joe Biden, you got Kamala Harris that still support increasing the police budget. And this time, in our new civil rights movement, they want to increase the police budget. They didn't say anything when DA said was taking people off the street in Portland, which was tactical on Joe Biden on his part because he wanted to use those powers as well. Mm-hmm. So once again, you're gonna have the same amount of evil no matter who wins. And people get mad at me when I bring this up, but Trump derangement syndrome is stopping people from critically analyzing the situation like they should. Yeah. And when you see the Hunter Biden censorship, that's exactly what you're going to see in Biden when it comes to anything that his administration is going to do. And that's why independent media is super important right now because it's going to be an info war during the next 4 years.
It's already here.
It already is. It's gonna. Let me say it like this: it's gonna escalate to a point I don't think we expect it because when I see the defense that the media has been running on Biden for ever since he launched his primary, ever since he launched his primary, his campaign, I've never seen the media defend a guy like this before, ever before. Yeah. I mean, we've seen it with Obama, we've seen it with them, but they were slicker. I feel like they were slicker, but now they are unapologetically being a super PAC for Joe Biden.
And like the man didn't get literally had to drop out of primary because he was plagiarizing people like that.
They'll never bring that up.
So man, look, everybody go follow Nick. I put his YouTube link and his Twitter in the description below, so make sure that you go follow him. I appreciate you coming on, man. We definitely got to do it again. I'm sure we're gonna have plenty of shit to talk about over the next couple of minutes. It's about to get crazy. It's about to get, bro. It really don't matter who wins. It's gonna get what was the election? November 3rd, right? November 3rd, the election. Is it November 3rd, the election? November 4th, it's on and popping, y'all. I'm telling you, it's gonna be real. I probably am never gonna leave this room. We're gonna see black circles under my eyes because no matter who wins, motherfuckers gonna be in the streets. Yeah, and you know, we're just gonna be, I don't want to say we're gonna be bystanders, but we're just gonna be objective onlookers. Like, yo, this is it. This is where Rome falls. To keep it a band. So, thank you for coming, man. For everybody else, click on the link in the description below. You can follow me on Twitter. Make sure you follow me on Rockfin. I'm about to go on Slow News Day with Steve Poikinen. So make sure you go check that out. That's gonna be fun. It's gonna be on Rockfin. And I'm on all my Twitter and Patreon stuff is in there too if you want to support the show. Other than that, always remember more than anything else, find your balance. Peace.